Scientists opened Jesus' tomb after hundreds of years. Groundbreaking discovery shook everyone to the core.
Imagine yourself in front of a centuries-sealed tomb.
Beneath the dim candlelight of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a team of experts leaned in as the stone covering Jesus' burial site was lifted for the first time in centuries. What lay beneath was not just stone and dust, but something so unexpected that historians and scientists have been arguing about it ever since. This was no ordinary relic. It was a discovery that could change everything we thought we knew about history and about him. The year was not an ordinary one for the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Inside the ancient walls, pilgrims knelt, candles flickered, and the air carried centuries of whispered prayers. But deep in the heart of the church, behind ropes and scaffolding, something was about to happen that no living person had ever seen with their own eyes. A team of conservators, archaeologists, and clergy gathered around a slab of marble. For generations, it had been believed to cover the very spot where Jesus Christ's body had lain after the crucifixion. No one dared to remove it. Not kings, not conquerors, not even modern scientists. The site was too sacred, too dangerous to disturb. But the marble had cracked. The ancient stone structure beneath it was weakening, and urgent restoration work was required. The patriarch gave his blessing. The tools were prepared. Cameras rolled. The atmosphere was tense. One false move could damage a relic that believers considered the most holy on earth. With slow, careful motions, workers pried at the marble, lifting it away for the first time in nearly 5 centuries. The room fell silent. Beneath the slab was another layer, gray, worn, and cold to the touch. It was the original limestone shelf, carved directly into the rock, believed to be the resting place of Jesus after he was taken down from the cross. But there was more. Dust and fragments that should have been long gone were still there. And there was an unusual, almost metallic sheen on certain parts of the stone, as though it had been scorched by heat that no normal flame could produce. Scientists leaned in, exchanging puzzled looks. This wasn't in their textbooks. Historians whispered to one another, their voices barely audible. And then, someone asked the question that would ignite controversy across the world. Could this be physical evidence of the resurrection? The marble was carefully set aside, the tomb opened to the light once more. What they found next would not just shake the faith of millions, it would challenge the very timeline of history. The first thing that caught everyone's attention was the faint, sweet aroma. It wasn't incense, it wasn't the heavy smell of centuries-old dust. This was something different. Several of the clergy exchanged glances. In the Christian tradition, the fragrance of holiness had been spoken of for centuries, often said to surround the relics of saints. But how could this scent still linger here after nearly 2,000 years? Archaeologists worked slowly, using soft brushes and delicate tools. Cameras zoomed in, broadcasting every movement to the waiting world. When the last of the dust was swept away from the limestone, a set of markings became visible. They weren't random scratches from age or erosion. They appeared intentional, faintly etched lines, almost like ancient writing. But this was no Greek, Latin, or Aramaic they recognized. The characters were uneven, almost hurried, as if carved by someone in haste, someone who didn't expect to live long enough to explain their meaning. One of the experts leaned in and whispered, "These could have been made by a witness." The possibility was staggering. Could this be the earliest recorded testimony of the burial, made by someone who actually saw it? And then came the moment that silenced even the hum of the cameras, as they gently removed the last fragment of debris from a narrow crack along the tomb's edge. Something small and metallic rolled free. At first glance, it looked like a simple coin, tarnished, worn, but intact. Under the lens, however, its details became clear. It bore the image of a Roman governor, one whose rule perfectly matched the time frame of Jesus' crucifixion. And on its edge were words barely visible to the naked eye. A phrase that, when translated, could be read as, "For the King of the Jews." The discovery sent waves of murmurs through the room. The coin wasn't proof of the resurrection, but it was undeniable proof of the exact historical moment described in the Gospels. Still, for the scientists present, the bigger question remained. What was that strange heat damage on the stone? What force could scorch solid limestone without fire or tools? The limestone slab was cool to the touch, except for one section. Before we dive deeper into the historic event of Jesus' tomb, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. You won't want to miss more contents like this, where history and faith come alive. Now, let's uncover this mystery together. When the archaeologists ran their hands along the surface, they paused over an area about the size of a human body. It was darker, slightly warped, and carried a faint shimmer under the artificial lights. At first, they assumed it was centuries-old soot from oil lamps, but when samples were taken for testing, the results baffled the scientists. This was not soot. It was thermal damage, scorching, caused by an intense burst of energy. But here was the problem. The type of heat needed to mark stone this way would have to reach temperatures so extreme that it should have destroyed the entire tomb. And yet, the damage was focused, precise, almost as if it had radiated from a single point within the slab. A physicist from the research team compared it to something seen in high-energy experiments, like a sudden release of radiation or light so powerful that it leaves a permanent shadow on stone. His words sent chills down the spines of those listening. It's as though something or someone passed through the stone. That theory was met with silence. For believers, it sounded eerily similar to the gospel accounts of the resurrection, Jesus' body leaving the tomb without the stone being moved by human hands. For the scientists, it was a puzzle they could not explain with any known natural phenomenon.
One of the priests on site quietly quoted Matthew 28:2. "And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone." Was this strange heat damage the physical echo of that moment? Was it possible that the resurrection itself had left a measurable trace in the fabric of the world, a scar on the stone that had remained for 2 millennia? The team agreed to run deeper analysis, high-resolution imaging, radiation testing, and light spectrum analysis. But as the scans began, something unexpected appeared on their monitors. It wasn't just heat marks. Embedded deep within the stone was a faint, ghostly image. The lab technicians leaned closer to the monitor. What they were seeing made no sense. Within the dense layers of the limestone slab, invisible to the naked eye, but revealed under a specialized scanning technique, was a faint outline, the silhouette of a man. Not carved, not painted, not etched, but somehow burned into the very molecular structure of the stone. The figure's head appeared slightly tilted. The arms seemed to be resting by the sides, with the faint suggestion of folded cloth around the body. The proportions matched that of a human being, but the image wasn't flat like an engraving. It had depth, almost as if the light that created it wrapped around the form. One of the researchers, a historian of Christian relics, froze when she saw it. This is almost identical to the imaging we've done on the Shroud of Turin." For centuries, the Shroud has been one of the most studied religious artifacts in the world, believed by millions to bear the image of Jesus at the moment of his resurrection. That image, too, was created by an unknown burst of energy that no technology, ancient or modern, can reproduce. And here, beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the traditional site of Jesus' burial, was a second, similar phenomenon, but in stone. The implications were staggering. If the shroud was the record of Christ's body in cloth, then this could be the record in rock. a direct imprint of the moment life returned to the Son of God. Skeptics in the room argued it could be an ancient hoax, some form of mineral staining. But when chemical analysis came back, it confirmed what the team feared and hoped. No pigments or paints were present. The discoloration was caused by structural changes in the stone itself. Those changes were consistent with a burst of radiant energy far exceeding any natural explanation. One scientist whispered, This is impossible." But a priest standing beside him softly replied, "Or it's a miracle." The drill bit slowed to a halt. Dust floated in the beam of the work lights, settling like ancient ghosts disturbed after centuries of silence. The ground-penetrating radar had shown a hollow space directly beneath the stone slab. But now, after carefully breaking through a small section, the team peered into the darkness below. A rush of stale, cold air escaped, carrying with it the faint smell of earth and something metallic. It was as if the air itself had been trapped since the 1st century. The archaeologists lowered a fiber-optic camera into the opening.
What the lens revealed was not an empty crypt, but a small stone chamber, no taller than a man could crouch in, and in the center was a rectangular recess cut into the bedrock. Within that recess lay a wooden object, blackened with age, yet unmistakably shaped like a box. The lead archaeologist's voice trembled as she called for the artifact to be carefully lifted out. The wood crumbled at the edges, but the iron bindings, corroded but intact, held the structure together. Etched faintly into the side was something that made the entire team fall silent. A series of letters in ancient Aramaic, 2 words, Yeshua Melech, Jesus the King. Gasps filled the chamber. They all knew the historical weight of those words. It was not common for tomb objects to bear inscriptions like this, and certainly not with such a direct title. If authentic, this box could be the most significant artifact ever uncovered in Christian archaeology. The box was taken to a secure, dust-controlled room within the church's preservation lab. X-ray imaging revealed that it was not empty. Inside, there appeared to be rolled parchments, something metallic, and an unidentifiable crystal-like fragment. The parchments were too delicate to unroll without specialized techniques, but fragments of the writing visible through cracks hinted at prophetic texts, some known, others completely unknown in the biblical record. Before the team could proceed, a strange thing happened. The crystal-like object inside the box began to refract the lab lights into a perfect cross-shaped beam across the walls, as if the object was alive, reacting to its surroundings after centuries in darkness. For 3 days, the preservation lab worked around the clock. The wooden box was carefully stabilized, every fiber of the ancient wood documented. No one wanted to be the person responsible for damaging what could be one of the most important discoveries in human history. Finally, under bright white light and the watchful eyes of church authorities, historians, and security guards, the lead conservator inserted micro-tools into the corroded iron clasps. With a faint, metallic groan, the final lock gave way. The lid lifted, and a hush fell over the room. Inside, resting on a bed of brittle linen, were 3 objects. 2 tightly rolled scrolls, wrapped in silk that had turned almost translucent with age. A fragment of crystal, perfectly clear, yet refracting the light into a golden hue. A small bronze seal, bearing the image of a lamb standing upon a hill, surrounded by rays of the sun. The scrolls were the first to draw attention. Using a specialized humidification chamber, the team began to gently unroll one of them. The Aramaic text inside was surprisingly legible, the ink still dark and sharp. It wasn't a gospel passage. It wasn't a known psalm. It was something else entirely. The opening line read, "When the stone is moved and a box is brought to light, the season of nations will end and the shepherd will return." The room fell silent. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others began to whisper prayers. The second scroll appeared to be a prophecy list, describing events that, shockingly, seemed to mirror modern history. Wars in the East, a plague sweeping across the earth, the gathering of nations against a small land in the Middle East, and then a final entry. In the year when fire rains from the sky, the king will set his foot upon the mount. Attention turned to the crystal. When touched, it seemed unnaturally warm, not like a heated object, but as though it had a living pulse. Under magnification, tiny flecks of gold appeared suspended inside, moving in slow patterns. The bronze seal, when pressed against soft wax, revealed the same phrase as on the outside of the box, Yeshua Melech. The Vatican had planned to keep the contents of the box under wraps until experts could verify every detail. But secrets like this don't stay hidden long. 3 days after the box was opened, blurry images of the scrolls and the Lamb's seal appeared online. Within hours, they had been shared millions of times. Hashtags like JesusBox, Prophecy Scroll, and Return of the King dominated every social media platform. And then, the arguments began. Some hailed it as the most significant Christian discovery since the Dead Sea Scrolls. Churches were packed with people praying, repenting, and searching for meaning. Evangelists called it a final warning from heaven. Others scoffed, dismissing it as an elaborate forgery meant to stir up religious fervor. High-profile skeptics claimed the wording was too convenient for our times. But then, something happened that shook even the most hardened critics. In the prophecy scroll, one of the entries had read, "On the third morning after the box is opened, the sky will turn to blood in the land of the cedars." On that exact morning, over Lebanon, known historically as the land of the cedars, the sunrise turned the deep crimson. Scientists rushed to explain it as a rare dust phenomenon mixed with atmospheric particles, but videos captured by ordinary citizens went viral. In the footage, the red sky seemed to glow unnaturally, casting a strange light over the streets. People began connecting dots. A flood in Italy, an earthquake in Greece, unusual lightning storms over Jerusalem, all occurring within the days following the discovery. World leaders could no longer ignore it. The United Nations called an emergency session to discuss public order and global stability in light of the growing panic. Meanwhile, religious leaders from multiple faiths urged their congregations to prepare their hearts without succumbing to fear. But deep inside the Vatican archives, one of the experts who had studied the scrolls privately confided to a colleague, "There's a part of the second scroll we haven't shown the public. It talks about a darkness over the nations and a voice from the mountain before the king comes. If that part is true, we may not have much time left." As news of the crimson sky and strange natural events rippled across the globe, an even stranger phenomenon began to unfold. It started as a low rumble, almost like distant thunder, but it wasn't tied to any storm or seismic activity. People reported hearing it in cities, towns, and even remote villages. The sounds were described as deep, haunting vibrations echoing from beneath the earth itself. In Jerusalem, some residents claimed the ground beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre vibrated gently for minutes. Pilgrims reported feeling an eerie calm wash over them, as if the very stones were awakening. Scientists scrambled to explain these vibrations. Some suggested minor tectonic shifts or underground gas emissions,
Yet no earthquakes were recorded and no seismic patterns matched the timing. Meanwhile, faith communities interpreted these sounds very differently. Many saw them as a supernatural sign, a trumpet call of the ages, echoing the ancient prophecies found in the newly opened scrolls. Churches held special vigils, worshippers gathered to pray and seek comfort in uncertain times. Reports poured in from around the world, from the deserts of Saudi Arabia to the forests of South America, of people hearing the same deep rumble. Some described it as a voice calling out, others as a heartbeat pulsing through the earth. These global experiences intensified the tension. Doubters grew uneasy, believers found renewed hope, and governments increased security near religious sites. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what might come next. But beneath the surface, literally and figuratively, something more was stirring. In a remote archaeological site near the Dead Sea, sensors recorded an unusual energy spike exactly at the moment the sound was heard. Experts were baffled. They had never seen anything like it. Theologians connected this to the scroll's warning.
When the voice rises from the deep, the veil will thin, and the king will walk among his people once more. Could the ancient prophecy be unfolding before their eyes? And if so, what did it mean for humanity's future? Just as the world was reeling from the strange sounds and ominous signs, an unexpected visitor arrived at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It was a quiet night, under a sky still tinged with the memory of crimson hues. The ancient stones of the church stood silent, but the air crackled with anticipation. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the entrance, cloaked, calm, and carrying an aura that seemed otherworldly. No one knew who he was. Security approached cautiously, but the man spoke with a voice that commanded respect and attention. "I bring a message from beyond the tomb, a warning and a promise." Word spread quickly. Journalists, religious leaders, and pilgrims gathered, desperate to hear what this stranger had to say. He spoke of the scrolls, the Lamb seal, and the prophecy. But then he revealed something no one had expected. The tomb opened not just to reveal ancient words, but to awaken a calling. The resurrection is not only a past event, it is a future promise. The king will return when the world is ready, and until then, these signs will guide the faithful. His message stirred hope and fear alike. Some embraced him as a prophet, others feared he was a charlatan. But his calm certainty and the timing of his arrival gave his words weight. Then he said something that sent chills through everyone present. "Beware the coming darkness. It will test all hearts, revealing who stands firm and who falters. But after the darkness, the dawn will break, a new era of peace, justice, and faith." The strangers vanished as mysteriously as he came, leaving behind a stunned crowd and questions that would haunt the world. Governments and religious institutions scrambled to respond. Debates flared. Was this the beginning of the end or the start of a new chapter in human history? Faith leaders called for unity and vigilance, urging people to prepare spiritually, while scientists and skeptics demanded evidence and cautioned against hysteria. The world stood at a crossroads, caught between doubt and belief, fear and hope. The discovery beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre had unlocked more than ancient secrets. It had opened the door to a profound spiritual awakening. As the mysterious messenger's words echoed through the world, a new unease grew. From distant lands came reports of a gathering darkness, not just metaphorical, but a literal, creeping shadow spreading across the horizon. Scientists showed satellite images of strange atmospheric changes, a dark veil moving slowly, swallowing sunlight and casting eerie twilight over entire regions. Scientists were baffled. There was no known natural explanation. In cities once bustling with life, people paused, sensing an unnatural stillness. Streets emptied, as if the world was holding its breath. Some claimed the shadow carried a chilling coldness, a heaviness that pressed down on the soul itself. Religious leaders warned that this was the trial foretold by ancient prophecy, the darkness before the dawn, the final test of faith. Churches and temples opened their doors wide, inviting all to seek refuge in prayer and unity. Meanwhile, governments heightened alerts, deploying experts to study the strange phenomenon. But answers remained elusive. Was this a cosmic event, a spiritual reckoning, or something far more sinister? At the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the very heart of these unfolding mysteries, pilgrims gathered, despite the fear. The empty tomb, once a symbol of hope and resurrection, now seemed to pulse with a quiet power, a beacon amid the encroaching darkness. The world stood at the brink, caught between fear and faith, science and spirit. The ancient scrolls, the open tomb, and the messenger's words all pointed to one undeniable truth. History was shifting, and humanity's greatest story was far from over. As the shadow loomed closer, the question remained: who would stand strong, and who would be consumed? The tomb had revealed secrets, the messenger had warned, but the ultimate chapter was still unwritten.